before we get started, I want to make sure you can all hear me. So if you can hear me, please let me know by sending a message in the chat box in the upper right part of the screen. And we're just getting audio and video turned on for everyone. All right, it looks like most of you can hear me. If you run into any audio issues during the webinar, you can just ask for my help by submitting a note in the chat box, and I'll try to help you fix it as best I can. So without further ado, let's get started. The topic of today's webinar is bringing the food economy home. And here to discuss this topic are Chris Sands, Marina O'Connell, and Anja Lyngbaek. I'll just give a brief introduction of each of them, and then they'll each tell you a bit more about their background and the work that they're doing in the local food movement. So Chris is the founder of Totally Locally, a Grassroots award-winning, free-to-use, open-source town kit to help bring vitality to town centers. And it's now being used by towns across the UK and now the world, from New Zealand to France, Austria, and Australia. And Marina is director of the Apricot Center, which is currently in the process of creating a new farm in Dartington, Devon, which will be part of a learning campus for farming on the Dartington Hall Estate. This is in the UK. And the farm will interweave biodynamic practices and agroforestry, and is designed using permaculture methodology. Finally, Anja is the Associate Programs Director of Local Futures. She has a special interest in organic food and farming and has worked on these issues for over 30 years in different parts of the world. For example, in 2000, she helped start Local Futures' local food program in the UK. And just so you know, phone number in the lower left corner, that is her. We'll start with about 10-minute presentations from each of our speakers, and then we'll move into roughly a 20-minute discussion period, after which we will continue with a 45-minute question and answer period. So you have plenty of time to get your questions ready. You can submit questions anytime you want into the chat box, and during the Q&A we'll do our best to get through as many as possible. If your internet connection is weak, you can also call in and listen to the webinar by phone. The phone numbers and instructions on how to do this are in your confirmation email, or you can just click the info button above the chat box. So with all that said, I'm going to turn things over to our presenters. And I think, Marina, do you want to go first, talking a little about yourself and your work?
Yes, thank you very much.
I'm going to try and pull up a presentation for you, but we'll see if it works.
Thank you. Yeah, not to worry. Thank you, Sean. So my name's Marina, and I am a horticulturalist. I trained to university level in horticulture, in conventional horticulture, and soon after that I trained in organic, biodynamic and permaculture methods, pretty much all at the same time when I worked at Dartington Hall in the late 80s. After that, I became a lecturer and managed to buy a small piece of land, 4 acres or 1.5 hectares of land in East Anglia, the east of the UK. And there I created a garden. So there are some photographs for you on a PowerPoint presentation, which I don't think you can see at the moment, but maybe you can later. But we started with literally a bare field with nothing on it but weeds, and weeds that hurt you, like nettles and thistles and brambles. And using the permaculture design methodology, I designed a farm that used agroforestry techniques to create I decided to grow organic fruit because it's high value. It's a high value crop. So I did that in 1999, and it evolved into a very beautiful and very productive fruit farm. I also grow cut flower and herbs and a few vegetables, but not very many. we graze that, the understory of that, with chickens for eggs as well. On the site we put up a small training centre that we call the Apricot Centre, and my husband is a psychotherapist, so he started therapeutic services and wellbeing services for children. I also provide educational and recreational activities for children. So last night I had a group of children and a cook, and we went foraging, and we made blackberry and basil cordial and chicken in the wood pizza. Chicken in the wood is a wild mushroom. So we sell our produce in London. We're 50 miles, from London. So I sell all of my fruit and my produce in the Growing Communities Market, which is, I think, the only organic farmers market in the UK. That's based in Hackney. The Growing Communities Market is quite extraordinary, and without the creation of the infrastructure for marketing my food, and obviously another 20 growers in and around London, I don't think I'd be in business today. So they've created this extraordinary market. They also do about 1,000 veg and fruit boxes a week, so I supply them wholesale. They set up patchwork farms throughout east of London, and they have really recreated a marketing infrastructure for sustainable food going into London. And what they're trying to do now is train people as to how to replicate that. About 3 or 4 years ago, the Biodynamic Land Trust and I and my husband met, and the Biodynamic Land Trust was set up from the Biodynamic Association in the UK. They were very fortunate to be given an endowment, some money, and they set up a community benefit company to buy land and to hold it in trust for sustainable food production in perpetuity. For each piece of land that they buy, they also do a share issue. So 50% is, well, each farm is owned by a community of 100 to 200 people. There are now 4 or 5 of these projects. So Tablehurst Farm, Huxham's Cross Farm, Oakbrook Farm, Ecodynamic is a power production, renewable energy on farms, and there's a seed co-op. All of these farms are also near centres of learning. So we were invited to put in a bid or a proposal for Huxham's Cross Farm, which is next to the Schumacher College in Dartington, or next part of the Dartington Learning Campus for Food. And this was accepted a few years ago. So our aim on this new farm is to replicate what we've done here, but to scale it up. And our aim is to produce healthy local food, to be financially viable, to offer a social aspect to the farm, and on our farm it's working with children in particular, to support wildlife and biodiversity, and to be part of a broader learning community. So this farm is very beautiful, but it had been farmed for 40 years by growing monocrops of barley and wheat, and sprayed and had fertiliser on it for the last 40 years. So it wasn't in a great shape, really. So what we did is we used the permaculture methodology to survey the site. So we surveyed the soil and the fertility and the aspect and the sun and the wind and the water, of which there's rather a lot down there. And we also surveyed our community and asked them what they wanted from their new farm. And we then ran a workshop. Well, in the meantime, we put the farm down to green manure so it would start to improve. We ran a design workshop in public, so that was quite an interesting process. We actually went through the permaculture design process in public, as it were, with a group of 10 people, and we did a live design for the farm, which created a wonderful design, far richer than if I'd sat in a room and done it on my own. We were also joined by a new partner at this point, Bob Mayhew, who is come out of project management for local government, and he also is a spreadsheet whiz and a finance whiz. So my husband being about therapeutic and well-being, myself with the growing and the environmental hat, and then now with Bob with a sort of financial project management hat, the three of us have worked together to after we'd finished designing this farm to actually bring it about into life. So we've been putting on biodynamic preparations because they improve the soil. We now have a flock of 100 chickens. We have a group of 10 volunteers come regularly to the farm. We just got 2 new cows called Damson and Daffodil to graze these incredible ancient meadows on the site that have been neglected and not cut for 10 years. They're full of orchids. We're building a new barn, and we're having a training centre, a small training centre that will go up in the next year to enable us to do the work that we do with small groups and children in particular. We also use this methodology. The Biodynamic Land Trust bought another farm in Stroud next to Hawkwood College, and we used the same methodology to help them and facilitate them to design and create their farm. So the farms that they're managing to buy are about 13 to 15 hectares or 30 to 40 acres. So they're quite small to actually make an economically viable farm. So that's why this design process is so important, that we can actually create an economically viable farm. Now, we were talking about challenges of strategies. Sean, were we going to discuss those later, or should I just explain what I think the challenges are for?
I think you can mention some now. Yeah.
No. Okay, good. So the challenges. So if you're wanting to start a smallish scale food producing local food system or unit, the biggest challenge in the UK, and I think probably worldwide, is access to land. That's why land trusts are so important, because by the time you've capitalised buying land, you can't actually. It's pretty much economically unviable to earn enough money from producing food to pay for the capital for the land. Once you've bought the land, you actually have so the Biodynamic Land Trust and 150 people have bought the land, and they are also putting the barn and the training room on there for us and for the people that come after us. We're financing, however, the setup costs, so the trees, the tunnels, the tractors, and also we're funding ourselves in the 2 years that it takes to convert the farm and bring it into production. The challenge is also the skill set that's required is incredibly broad, and so it seems you need a strong social skill set, a strong growing skill set, and a strong economic skill set. So it's rare that one person has those. So teamwork is very, very important, and collaboration. And the infrastructure for marketing local produce in the UK is really not there anymore, because I think 90% of our food or more is sold through supermarkets now. So recreating that infrastructure again, if you're actually growing is really difficult. So again, working with others to recreate those infrastructures is really important. And personally, I find the biggest challenge with being a food producer is actually making a living, earning your living from doing that. And I know it sounds perhaps silly, but it's really, really difficult to make enough money to live on. So I've managed to do that for the last 15 years. So I'm trying to replicate that and scale that up in Devon. And I'm hoping then that if we manage that, we can then show other people how to do it. But it is very challenging. And in terms of strategies, well, of course, as a grower, I'm not really working on a strategy level, but my own strategy is, to make sure that we earn enough money that we can carry on, and to create a farm that actually can demonstrate how you can do some of those things. I suppose if I was talking to somebody who was working at a higher level, I would ask them if they could offer subsidies to this level of farming, because we seem to not get that many. So I think that's my 10 minutes, or 12 minutes it seems. So I think I've probably said enough for now.
Right, I guess we can hand it over to Chris now. I'll pull up your presentation in a moment.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marina.
Are you there? Are you ready for me?
Okay, I think we're ready whenever you are.
Okay. Have I got? Do you want me to just tell you when to change slides, or is it?
You can change them yourself if you want. You can just click on the next one to change it.
Got you. Right. Brilliant. Thank you. That's fantastic.
Okay.
Hi. I'm Chris Sands. I'm currently sat in Hebden Bridge in West Yorkshire, in the north of England, and we were talking previously about the localism and creating a local structure and creating a dynamic local economy. And one of the things that kept coming back is how do you get people to work together? So although this presentation isn't particularly food-centric, we use food on everything that we do and totally locally, because people get food, and as we say, everybody eats. So it's a good starting point. So I'll just give you a quick sort of overview of what we do. I myself, I work in branding and marketing. And that's what I do for a living, totally locally. It doesn't bring us any income at all. It's just something that me and the guy that I work with, my friend Mark, we do in our spare time just to try and help people out. So what is totally locally? It's a community-led town centre management and regeneration kit, I suppose, open source. We say it's open source, not in the official way, but just the fact that we have a big group of people on Facebook that throw in ideas and swap things and just to help each other out. And that was made mainly because we hadn't got the time to do it ourselves. So the whole idea was we hand it over to people to sort of carry on the campaign and do what they want with it, really. So it's basically a strategic brand campaign, which sounds a bit airy-fairy, I suppose, but it's just the bit that was missing. As Marina was just saying, the ability to market local produce and local things is very, very difficult to find. So I saw a gap in that. My local council, which is Calderdale Council, this is the area I live in. It's full of hills and it's full of it's got 6 towns. And as we say, it ain't London. It's the north. It's very beautiful, and it rains a hell of a lot. So my council asked for a shop local campaign, and they seed funded a little shop local campaign for our area. So I did it, and it had a huge effect straight away, and loads of other towns asked for it as well. So my friend Nigel, who I was working with at the time, Nigel Goddard, we decided that wouldn't it be a good idea just to give it away, and then it's off our plate and we don't have to talk about it again. And so we did. We put it online, a whole kit for people to use, and since then it's just become a monster. So over the six years, we've got loads of towns all over the world doing it. So this is our website, totallyLocally.org. You can go on there, and there's loads and loads of free things to do and get involved in. So it includes a step-by-step guide for getting interest in a town, for how to run a meeting, not in the way that you would normally run a meeting. That's one of the things that we say. And templates for all the posters and things like that. So it is there for you to market your town, your production, your network to the public and to each other as well. So as it stands at the moment, it's in 50 towns in the UK, roughly. And I have no idea, actually, to be honest. It could be anywhere between 40 and 60, something like that. So it goes in and out. It's had huge impact, like across the world. So in Waiheke Island is one, and then Australia and America, now France, and Austria. So there's loads of things. And it's been translated by those people as well. And the lovely thing is, when it's been translated into French or something like that, they then give the French version back into the kit for other people to use, for other French towns to use as well. And that's the ethos that we have here. it's based on this. This is my favorite quote from Dr. Seuss. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. High literature, that's what we like to work on. There's some real strong case studies which are on the website. So we just took a little, why should you care, whether we have small businesses or not, or localism or not. We just took one little shop that's a food delicatessen and farm shop, and we said, how many local suppliers you've got? And they had 33. They've upped it to about 45 now. But if you take we then took 2 of those local suppliers and asked them, and they both said around about 20. They had 20 local suppliers each. So what you have, if you can imagine, you've got at one layer, you've got 600 businesses all hanging together through this one shop here. And then if you took each of their suppliers as well, you'd probably find out they had another 20. So if you go up 2 or 3 levels, you're finding that there's a whole infrastructure of businesses and makers and growers all hanging on together. And if you pull one piece out of that, the whole thing starts to collapse. And that creates ghost towns, that creates unemployment. And so, yeah, so I'll just jump a couple of slides there. So as I said, it's spread quite a lot. We use the £5 message, which is if you take your town and you say, if each adult spent just £5 a week in our local town, it would be worth X amount of pounds a year. And that's those numbers stack up quite big. I'm looking here at some of the places. So in Burslem, it's worth £6 million. In the area where I live, Calderdale, we have about 120,000 people in the area, and it's worth 60 million a year. So it's really big numbers from people spending £5 a week on their local stuff. One of the reasons why it's worked, and it comes down to what we've just been talking about, what Marina was saying about working together. We wrote the rules, and we wrote them in a way that we just thought, well, what would we, if we were going to join something like this, what would we want? So we didn't want rules, we didn't want red tape. There's no politics, and you can't settle your old scores. Lots of small towns have these inbuilt sort of 20-year-old arguments that go back generations, even some of them. So, and one of the things that we say is, as well, is you can't say what's in it for me, because this is all about getting your town busy. And if your town gets busy, your business by default will get busy too. So there's no membership, you can't join, and there's no committees, and definitely no chairman, and definitely no minutes. We always say if somebody wants to be the chairman, you take them outside and shoot them. That's not really shoot them, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it is about having fun, promoting each other. Again, we'll talk about in a second. Loving where you live, meeting in pubs. One of the big things is the big ideas come when you're having a drink, or sat around having a chat, it's really informal. It's mad ideas, and it's making friends with people who are like you. But most of all, it's about people just doing it and not asking permission from your council, not asking permission from anyone else. And the one thing I would say, so Totally Locally is a toolkit, and it can work. It can work tremendously well. We've got some really brilliant statistics from some towns where vacancy rates have gone from 17% to 3%. Small independent businesses repopulating the high street, small makers, food producers. But it only works through collaboration. So a town that's not working together can take the same tools and completely fail. So, and the thing is, collaboration is bloody hard. So one of the things we say, if you are a butcher, then the other butcher down the road is not your enemy. The supermarket and the big multinational who will happily sell lamb from the other side of the world, they're your enemy. And I use the word enemy very loosely and very tongue-in-cheek, but that's who you're against. But you can never win on your own. You must work together. So what we've done is we've created the sort of structure for these collaborations and things to work. We have rules. I won't go through them, but number one is be nice, because it gets things done. Being nasty stops things happening. There's no advertising. You can't do that. There's you've got to say that's not what your town can do for you, but what can you do for your town? Really simple stuff. Number 9 rule is be nice, because we thought it was worth repeating. And number 10 is there's no more rules. You can see, sorry, there's a bit of a noise outside. Is that coming through okay? You okay? These are some of the stuff that we do, some of the promotional stuff that you can download for free. And there's lots of things like Fiverfest, which is promotional stuff that's in the kit as well. This is some of the stuff being done all around the world, the same stuff being used in 3 different places. I'm aware of my time, I'll be 2 minutes. It's not just for businesses, we've got, not just for shops, it's for businesses. So you may have seen this around, this has gone viral. This is all available to have a look at on the website as well. And we have this, again, going back to the, when you shop here, you support 29 other local businesses. So we could talk about the structure again. This is some of the things that are in the kit. And other people have added lots of great things too, which have traveled the world as well. So it's really nice for people. So Totally Local is huge. It's run completely on people power. It's run with no money. No money swaps around. We ask people to cadge favors and stuff, and really work together to try and make things work. And you know, as a closer, you know, for me, localism is important, tremendously important for our futures of our communities, for jobs and local economies. But for me, most importantly, I believe it makes happier people. So localism makes happier people. So by connecting people with the place that they live, and with people who live there, there's a fundamental human need fulfilled. It's what we need, it's what we all want, it's what we all crave, that connection to place. We need it to be in sync with our place and home and our neighbours, and then we become happy. And we've seen this happen many, many times. And that connection can come through food, through exploring your town with new eyes, or with an effort to support people and business in your area. And that's what we said. So we've facilitated people to convey that message. I'll be really quick. Some links you can have a look at there is totallylocal.org. That's where you can get all the free stuff, marketing, and there's loads of examples, and there's loads of how-tos as well. Incredible Edible Todmorden, you probably may have heard of. Incredible Edible is 3 miles that way. I know Mary and I know Pam really well. That's just beautiful, being kind and growing food and sharing. And I've just done a really strong, really beautiful piece, audio piece on the Barossa Valley, where I've been working in South Australia, luckily for me. And that's about the cooperative movement there, which is huge. That is hugely about localism, and they don't even realise they're doing something special, I don't think. So that's me over. I've just run over a little bit. I do apologise. Go ahead.
No problem.
Okay.
And I can, when I send a follow-up email to everyone who has attended this webinar, I can include these links for people to look at. So I'm going to change it to change the layout to bring up your videos. And Anja, did you want to say a little bit now?
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Chris, and thank you, Marina. I will have a chance to talk more now. I don't have any attractive slides to share. So I've been working with Local Futures in its over a number of years, well, over I think 3 decades now, on different occasions, and Local Futures, formerly the International Ecology and Culture, have focused on local food for, well, I think since the 1980s, for a long time before it really became a term. And as probably a lot of our participants know, we, Local Futures, working localization as we see it as a systemic strategy for change that can, like Chris was saying, strengthen local community, create place-based economy, make us happier, and far more sustainable, decreasing, for example, our ecological footprint. And within that, we see local food, or creating local food system, as perhaps the most important thing that we can do, because it's such a solution multiplier. I mean, both you, Chris and Marina, have talked about that to some extent. So, so the idea, of course, overall is to decrease the distance between producers and consumers, and also to some extent the middlemen, and supporting sustainable food production and small-scale diverse farmers, which is possible within local food systems. And I have sort of a long history working with organic farming, as Sean said, and in a number of countries ranging from Europe to Latin America. And but I became so that's one of the point of view I started from, more sustainable farming. But I became convinced of the importance of local food actually when I was studying in Britain, and had the opportunity to do research on what was the first box scheme. It was called Northwood Farm, and it was as close to where I am right now. This is in Exeter. And what I did was compare Northwood Farm. They were a small organic producers producing vegetables, and they had for a number of years sold their produce to a supermarket. And then they thought, we're not making any money, and let's try to sell it locally, which is what they did to a box scheme. And so when I looked at it and compared, when they sold locally directly to producers, the transport of their food was reduced by a factor of 20, from 50,000 kilometers a year to 1,600. Their crop diversity increased from 15 crops to 60 crops, and their net income increased from just a very humble £1,000 a year to between 2 years, simply because the middleman, the supermarket that sort of sucked up all the profit was gone. So that made me convinced that local food production was the way forward, not just thinking about the production on the farm, sustainable production on the farm. So I've been following the local food movement on several continents, and for example, feel very encouraged by the many community-supported agriculture schemes that have developed and multiplied all over the world. I think they're sort of, well, it's gone up from the 80s with just, for example, in the US, I think there was about 2, and in the 2014 there were over 6,000. I think in the UK it's more like 700 or 800. And this kind of thing has spread not only to food production, but also to fishery. We have an example on our Planet Local page of community-supported fishery in Canada, where you pay a share to the fisherman, and then you get you pay a fee, and then you get a share of the seafood within it. And farmers markets, which Marina, you were talking about being so important for the survival of your farm, is also spreading to not all of them equally good. But I was just talking to a Costa Rican young man the other day, who is the co-founder of a very exciting farmers market in Costa Rica. It's called Feria Verde. We will be doing a podcast on that next month. And the thing that was unusual there, well, it's a sort of consumer producer initiative. Well, it's a consumer initiative that includes producers, and they have grown in just a period of 6 years to having 2 markets in the capital city every week, and having 3,000 people that buy their food there, 500 families that have farming families, and others that have their main income thanks to the farmers market. And I think one of the most encouraging things that I was told was that the younger generation of farmers, the sons of daughters, of the farmers have for the first time now, many of them said that they want to pursue a future in farming. And the farmers market is now helping them to get trained in permaculture, agroecology, all sorts of other things that could be useful for them. So this is a very necessary component of local food systems that is trying to encourage and make it possible for younger people to take up farming. I think I want to mention another example from Hungary, which in Cargomania, we also have it featuring on our website, which is an interesting combination, a collaboration as you were talking about, Chris, of an organic vegetable farm that are collaborating with a bicycle co-op that produces bicycles, makes them, and a bike delivery company. So the three of them got together, and also a bakery. So the bike company delivers it, and the bike co-op makes the bike, and then the food producers that produce it. Another thing quickly that I want to mention are the sort of, because as Marina was saying, where do you very important challenges, where do you sell your food and where do you get a good price for it? And so both in the UK, in Denmark and many other places, you have these community stores popping up. I'm sure you know about this, Chris, too. One very close to here, again, called the Real Food Store in Exeter. 300 local people are owners of the shop. Some of them also work there. And they, 70% of all their food sold comes from Devon, which is the region around it, and almost 100% Italian. And I know of similar shops in Denmark that also have been started with the objective of helping small, diverse farmers, getting sustainable food production going, and getting healthy, fresh food to consumers. And because there are no market for the local producers, then one of the ways of going about that is setting up these community stores. And in Copenhagen, there's something called the Consumer Co-op, which is based on the Japanese model of consumer co-ops, like to say Katsu Club, where people have gotten together and they buy sort of many small farmers that usually, in this case, produce organic food. And the members are also sort of co-workers in that you have to do some voluntary work in able to get food at a reasonable price. So there are sort of 9 local units in Copenhagen of this food co-op. And so we will be talking about challenges a little bit more, but so what I see as one of the main challenges is, from my also personal experience in Mexico, are the free trade treaties that are undermining local food systems, not only local food systems. I wanted to give a small example of that with a big impact. You may probably have heard of NAFTA, a free trade treaty, North American, between Mexico and North America, and that was ratified about 20 years ago. It allowed cheap export of food to Mexico from the US, heavily subsidized, which undermined the livelihoods of millions of farmers in Mexico. So we have about 2 million farmers that have lost their livelihoods in Mexico that have migrated to the US, another 5 million that have gone into cities because they can't survive. They simply cannot produce food that can compete with the subsidized food. At the same time, we've had an increase of the big retailers, the supermarket chains that you were talking about, Chris. And so we now have Walmarts everywhere, out competing local businesses as well, undermining local food system in another way. And at the same time, we've had a huge increase in the consumption of Coca-Cola and all kinds of other industrial foods. So sort of, you know, undermining the food system systematically. So this is one of the things that I see as one of the biggest challenges also to do the further development of local food systems. I think I've probably run my time, Sean. Big time, right?
No, you're doing fine. Thank you, Anja. I guess we can move into a short discussion period between the three of you. Anja, do you want to start that off?
Yes, so we talked about that what we see as some of our main challenges. So, for example, Marina, you were saying that one of the biggest problems for you is how to make it as a producer, and that in terms of strategies that you would like to say, you know, that it would be nice to have, or very essential to have, some subsidies also directed towards the level that you are doing that. It's something we haven't talked about yet, that big agribusiness is heavily subsidized in many parts of the world, including in the UK or in the EU, as it has been for many years in the US, and that is another way that local producers have been, and small producers have been, undermined. I also heard you also mentioned, what was one more thing? The access to land, and which I mean, tied into the fact that as a producer, there is no way that you can ever earn enough money to buy land. So I wondered if you could say a little bit more about that, and also about the land trusts.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yes, I am. So just in the UK, land prices have I think doubled in the last 5 years, because it's seen as a safe investment. So people are buying up land even though they're not farmers. So Dyson, the vacuum cleaner man, has bought up, well, the joke is he's bought up half of Lincolnshire, which is one of the most productive farming areas in the UK, pushing the land prices up there. So I actually do come from a horticultural family. So my family are Dutch, and 6 generations previous to me had a farm or a horticultural holding in the Netherlands. But of course, it's inherited down the male line. So I'm a woman, so I didn't inherit it. So we were very privileged in that we managed to buy our 1.55 hectares in 1999 with a house on it, and it was derelict. And I managed to somehow finance that through working at college as a lecturer to plant it all up. But now the prices, the land that I'm on now, has gone up by a factor of 6. So, and on 1.55 hectare, it's so marginal for me to actually make a living. I can make about half a living, which I do in the growing season, and then the other half of the year I need to do something else to boost the income up. So if I expanded my production, if I times 3, so if I had about 12 acres of fruit, then it would be much easier to make a living. I could employ somebody to help me. So, being a farmer on your own and being a mother, it is very difficult. So, but in order to get that extra piece of land, I just simply don't have the money. So the land trust, they see it as it's part of the ethos of the biodynamic movement. The Soil Association, the organic registration body in the UK, has also set up a land trust. There's also an ecological land trust. So what they're doing is trying to buy up these small pieces of land so that new entrant farmers have access to this land, so that they can use some of the new agroecological permaculture biodynamic methods. So if you inherit a farm, quite often people don't go down that route because it's quite hard if you've inherited a farm to change the method of farming. So I see, for us as a business, it's been an incredible opportunity to be offered 13 hectares or 33 acres for a rent of £2,000 a year. I mean, it's an incredible opportunity. It's phenomenally hard work, and we've had to invest money ourselves. But there is absolutely no way that I could have done that without the land trust. So you can buy a share in the farm. People can buy. A share is worth £250, so anyone can buy a share. It's what's called a withdrawable share, so you can get the money back if you decide to sell your share in a few years. You can and get your money back. You don't get any interest on it. The dividend that you get for that investment is that you get newsletters, of course, and then in the fullness of time, once we're up and running, we will be offering visits and the opportunities to stay on the farm and anything else we can think of that the shareholders might like. So as a farmer, it's made it a very different experience for me, because on my 1.55 hectares, of course, it's been just me doing what I felt was best. And now, of course, I'm doing it for a community of people who've invested in this piece of land, and I'm doing it for the I'm also doing it for all the customers, of course, who are going to be buying the produce. So it's a very different. It feels like a very collaborative experience. Although, as Chris mentioned, it's very difficult sometimes to do that. I'm just going to say one last thing, is because where I currently live is actually a land settlement. So it was set up in the 1930s at the time of the Great Depression by the coalition government in the UK. At that time there was this massive depression. There was no welfare state in the UK. So the government bought up 20 large farms and divided them up. So the place I live has been subdivided, so there are 80 houses and each house has a 4-acre plot. It's grade 1 land and the microclimate is ideal for horticulture. And they brought the miners down from the north of the UK, from Newcastle, and settled them. They called them colonies, so they settled them on these 4-acre plots, and they set up a cooperative down the road, and that was called a compulsory cooperative. So the miners were trained, I think, in 3 months flat, and were given this piece of land and a house, and were able to make a living by selling through the cooperative. And as far as I'm aware, that's a very unique experiment in giving people access to land. They were privatised in the early 80s by Margaret Thatcher and sold off. So then, now they're quite valuable because they're a house with 4 acres of land and no agricultural tie. It's very popular. So does that answer that question a little bit?
Marina, could I ask you a question? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. When you were saying about the inability to make a living on the land, are you saying then, because this is, are you saying that to be able to make a living to producing food, then you have to either inherited land, or you had that land in the first place, or you had a wealthy start? Is that what you're saying, or?
Yeah. Well, you can rent pieces of land, but quite often they're on a short tenancy. So therefore, again, if you want to be sustainable, you need to invest in a long-term commitment. So that makes that difficult unless you have a secure tenancy. You can rent farms on long-term tenancies, larger scale farms. So Dartington Hall is a good example in that they were looking for a tenant who would farm sustainably, and they've given John Perkins a long-term tenancy. We've been given a long-term tenancy as well on our small parcel of land. But so for instance, I'm a mother with children, so quite often what happens is you buy your piece of land, and the cheaper pieces of land are more marginal, therefore it's harder to grow on them, and you can't live on them. So that means, you know, in terms of family life and farming, it gets quite complicated. You can't just pop out at 8 o'clock at night to put the chickens to bed if you're 5 miles down the road. So then, you know, so it's challenging like that. If you don't want to live in a caravan, if you want to live in a house, and then you have to be very skilled at growing high quality or high value produce, let's say, and you need to sell that, as Anja was saying, you need to sell that direct to the consumer to cut out the middleman to make it viable. So I think I know it's Tim Dean that Anja was talking about. So I was living in Devon at that time, and I knew a lot of organic growers, and you know, you have to work incredibly hard, incredibly long hours, and you know, and earn what is regarded as not, you know, I mean, if I added my wages up, I think I'd be lucky to hit the minimum wage, to be honest. But you know, it's what I do and I love it, and it's a lifestyle choice. So I stopped counting the hours some years ago. But does that make sense?
Yes, certainly. I think I'm sat in the Calder Valley, and this area was the birth of the cooperative movement was just within like
Can you
5
speak
miles
up, Chris? Please.
Sorry,
speak up.
Where I'm. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'll just turn it down a little bit. But where I'm based is the Calder Valley, which is it's the birth of the cooperative movement. So it's quite interesting, and it's sort of ingrained into this area. But what the best example I've seen of this, and I think it's quite unknown, but when I was over in Australia in the Barossa Valley, there's a little town called Nuriupta, and they have a cooperative there that's got 18,000 members, and it's been going since the 1920s, I think, and it's a huge out-of-town shopping mall with a big supermarket, and they stock twice as much as the local Walmarts, Coles, Woolworths, and all those lot. But they actually they're encouraging small producers, and they bend over backwards to accommodate, so much so that the local butcher on the high street is, the main street is, their biggest customer is the actual supermarket themselves, because they stock his stuff and vice versa. And I'm just putting together a little piece about it, but it's quite phenomenal. And the money that they, the profits that they make are actually invested back into the local area, as in parks, as in schools and things like that. And they even own a hotel as a cooperative. And it's a really incredible model. It comes from the Lutheran Church background of the area, which has been there. So it's all about sharing. It always has been. And the funny thing for me is they don't even seem to think that it's anything extraordinary, which I find amazing. But it's a really beautiful model to see it. And that enables small growers and small makers to actually hit the, to expand their businesses. And yeah, so I just wanted to point that out. So I'll put a little link to that afterwards. I'll send that through as well. Yeah.
But that's why the Huxham's Cross Farm for me, for us as a team, has felt like such a wonderful opportunity, because,
I just want to say, I'm
wondering, Sean.
Yeah. I was going to. There is. I just wanted to officially open this to questions from anyone in any of our participants. Feel free to ask anything you want in the chat, and we can just continue this conversation and bring in your questions as they come in. Chris, I think there's a bit of an echo coming from your computer still, so.
I'll take it.
So why we wait for questions, I would like to add one thing, because it can be somewhat misleading when we hear how tough it is to be a farmer, in the sense that it can make us think that you simply cannot make a living from farming. And that is to some extent true. That is certainly very difficult, but it's not because farming can't do a good job or farmers can't do a good job. It's because we are in a very artificial situation created by this global market economy. So local food can quite often be far more expensive than food you'd get in a supermarket that has been flown in from far away. And it's not because
I think we lost you, Anja.
Oh. Can you
All right.
hear me now?
Yes, you're back now.
I was saying it's a misleading picture of local food, that it can be more expensive than imported food, and the reason why it's more expensive is because the other part has been subsidized through subsidies to the fossil fuel business, which is equivalent to about $10 million every year from government.
Looks like there's some trouble with your internet right now.
Government subsidies to fossil fuel industry. Right. Okay, so over to questions then. If I get a chance.
Okay. All right, no worries. So this question is from Sue Peters. She's asking, at the local level, when creating your community, do you include the non-organic small farmers? Are there any of these?
With the totally locally thing we do, it's all about the area. It's all about where you are. It's all about your locale and how you affect the local economy. So for us, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's organic or not. We have very little rules, as I've said before. So yeah, that's our outlook is that you would rather buy locally than organic from one of the things I think, as Anja was saying, is that the ludicrous thought of that you can buy lamb from New Zealand in the place in Yorkshire where I am, which is as far away as you can actually get, where we have local lamb that's probably better quality and actually there, and it can be from farm to plate within 2 days. I was reading that the average British Christmas dinner last year had travelled 26,000 miles, which is, just crazy. So we're all about, the things that we encourage is that just to look at where things come from rather than the organic nature as well. But it's important.
Marina, did you want to add anything, or should we go to the next question?
Yeah. So on that farmers market in London, the growing communities, they made a decision to use the organic standard as a minimum for a low carbon, to translate into a low carbon farm. So they've used that as their sort of standard of their carbon budget. What's interesting for me is in Devon, with a new project at Hudson's Cross, we are collaborating with other local farmers on a marketing project, and most of those are very small, and so they are organic but not certified because it would cost too much money. So I'm very happy with that, and the customers, the emphasis is that it is local rather than certified organic. So as Chris says, it varies from place to place.
Great. So the next question asks, do you think governments are making any efforts to legislate and support local economies? And is there any way organic farmers can get subsidies? I don't know who wants to answer that first.
So I could offer the answer about organic farmers getting subsidies.
Sure.
Shall I do that first? Yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
So organic farmers can get subsidies, and then the UK government has just produced a new scheme, Countryside Stewardship scheme, and actually for the first time in the 12 years that I've been looking at these schemes, organic farmers get a mandatory payment that is actually really quite generous. So at Huxham's Cross we are going to get about £10,000 a year in subsidy for our organic conversion. However, you know, in the 15 years I've been farming in Essex, I haven't had a penny, almost because I'm organic, because it doesn't fit in the criteria. Well, I got a little bit of conversion payment, but nothing ongoing. So that's come from the EU about the greening of farming, but of course now post-Brexit that will be renegotiated, and we'll have to see what happens. The but with that is that now, in order to get a subsidy, you have to have a farm that is a minimum of 12 hectares. So if you are a small farmer, you don't get any subsidy at all, whether you're organic or not. And the Land Workers Alliance is campaigning on behalf of small-scale farmers for some sort of investment, government investment.
Okay.
So Chris can probably answer the other half of the question.
An answer to the first question about, do you think governments are making any efforts to legislate and support local economies? Yes, I mean they are in some cases, but there is a huge limit to what local governments can do because of the free trade treaties most countries have signed on to, so-called free trade treaties, which supersede a lot of the national and regional legislation that you can have. So, what we are seeing is that, for example, within the EU, just to take an example, I don't quite know the level, but public procurement, as far as I know, I mean, I had this discussion with some people in Denmark a couple of years ago. They can only decide, for example,
Hi, you're back now.
So local produce, like municipal institution can say, maybe we want to support local farmers, local producers and service providers, but they can only decide up to, I think it's about 20%. And then the other 80% is has to be open to public, to procurement, has been open to bids from also international providers. And that is also included in most so-called free trade treaties. So that limits, in this case, the public and governments to be able to support and local economies. And it was one of the things that, for example, EU was have been trying to include in the TTIP, free trade treaty with the US, where they, in a sense, have some legislation. For example, they have just heard today that the food stamps that people that are low-income people, they can, if you use food stamps and buy local food, you get, that's a way of sort of help support local producers and local economies.
I think in Britain, I think there's a will to support, but I'm not sure that it's got a good strategy. And I think as things happen within governments, that when there's a change in personnel, strategies change. I think they throw a lot of money at a problem when the solutions have to be grassroots. I've always said that. They have to come from the people themselves. There needs to be created a will to actually want to support local businesses. I actually think that most people want to shop locally. I think that most people would prefer good food that came from their local area. Most people don't know how to do it. The misconception that things are more expensive when they're not is a big thing. I also, one of the things I think at the moment, going off that a little bit, but the supermarkets have started branding things up with so-and-so farm. And there's a big, I think it's The Independent this week, there's been a big article saying, no, these things have come from Poland, but we put a British-looking tractor on the front of it. And the supermarkets particularly are really trying to get in on this local feel, I think. And people are taken in by it. We all are, just by association and imagery. So it's very clever. But the real, coming back to the governmental thing, in the UK, I'm not sure that it's effective. And one of the difficulties, I think, is because you're dealing with lots and lots of very small businesses. So how do you get representation? How do you pull in ideas? How do you return ideas? And I understand it must be very, very difficult where you can go to two or three multinationals and talk to two or three people and create a big, a strategy going forward. So it's a difficult situation. I don't know how to do it. I honestly believe that people just got to get on and do it themselves. That's without government. So, yeah.
I just want to add to that, which you probably heard about local business alliances popping up, and the most well-known is probably the one called BIM, which is Business Alliance for Local Living Economies. So this is one way that you can really have quite an impact when local retailers and businesses get together to make a common front against these transnational corporations, and also speaking the case and sort of educating local politicians about the important role of local businesses in maintaining local economies, for example, paying taxes, which a lot of the big ones don't do.
That's the biggest thing, isn't it? That's the biggest thing of all. Our local council are looking into procurement at the moment as well, so how they procure food for events and things like that. So it should come local first. And our markets have actually taken the farmers market, which I've been to many farmers markets, and when you quiz the people selling there, although they are small businesses, they've travelled 70 miles or something to sell their stuff, and then they leave again. So I was talking to our head of markets the other day, and they have a policy of 5 miles if possible for the stallholders, and 15 as a maximum from the area as a circular. So that's on our local level, but this I think there's a will for this, and I think there's a change coming. I think there just needs, again, some sort of movement that can actually pin people down and make it easy for people, and that's what I think needs to happen from here.
So I want to jump back. I just found a question from earlier in the chat about the Biodynamic Land Trust. So this question is asking kind of about whether relying on something like a land trust is participating in the sort of old capitalist system that isn't working. I don't know, Marina, do you have any thoughts on that, or why that might not be the case?
Yeah, well, I mean, it is, absolutely. It's, it's about buying land that is inflated in price really, because of the stock market crash. However, that is, unless we're going to have a revolution first, it's a very pragmatic way to actually get something done. So I understand the query, and of course, it's a tiny drop in the ocean. 5 farms so far. So it's about 150 acres. It's a tiny drop in the ocean. So, but what they want to do is to set up these farms, and they've been very strategic. So each farm is next to a college, so that they hope people will come and see them working, and then think, oh yeah, I could go and do that somewhere else. So I completely agree, but I think there's something. I am a pragmatist. Martin Large, who started the Biodynamic Land Trust, he's a pragmatist. So we have to work within the system that we've got. Growing communities, they are a social enterprise, but everything, they don't apply for grants on principle. They make everything pay for itself, and it works, and it works, and it's thriving, and it's great fun, and it's participative, and it's fantastic. But if you have to constantly wait for government or grants or something, nothing is ever going to happen. So, I feel this is about people power. It's about 150 people chucking, 250 pounds in a pot, or £1,000, because the zero rate interest in the bank anyway. A lot of people are saying, well, I might as well put my money there rather than have it in the bank. So it's a pragmatic, tiny solution to a problem, because I've been doing this sort of work for 30 years, and I've stopped working on that sort of, I've stopped trying to change things because I'm exhausted. I'm just doing what I can on this pragmatic level, and I hope that then will act as a inspiration possibly for somebody else as to what you can do when you're given a few tiny bits of resources, tiny little bits of resources. I don't know if that answers the question at all. But basically,
that's great.
I can't
Thank
overthrow capitalism this week.
I think it's curious to see. If you look at the political agenda, well, not curious, it's sad, almost both on the left and the right, that there is very little mention of food production, the importance of food production, is sort of like as if we were all going to be living on computer technology and something like that. So it's not something that's discussed very much, and certainly not the issue that that is not discussed to the extent that it should. That people can't afford to get agricultural land, or that all the farmers are getting old. It's sort of mentioned, but we're not really doing anything about it when we are undermining food systems and food opportunities, systemically. The land trust that Marina has been talking about are happening in many places, not just here in the UK. So land trusts that buy up land and keep them for agricultural purposes, saving them from being sold for construction and so forth, and have long leases, for example. Or there's something called, I think it's called slow money in the US, which is also sort of local people investing in local food systems, often with either a very low interest or interest-free, as a way not only of getting land for farmers, but also of helping small producers or small retailers or small food processors getting going or expanding. So I think it's something we're going to see more of, different versions of it, in the future. Obviously, I'm of the belief that we need to, while we need to work on a local level as we can, and the people power, we also need at the same time to address the mechanisms that are undermining local economies. and local communities and agriculture. Because if we don't do it, we're not going to be as effective. So I sort of feel a strong need to do both. And sort of one of the things inspired by you, Chris, you said you were going to come up with a piece of paper. I think you were going to show it, and I said, oh, you, but now I'll go first. Can you see? So this is, can you see it actually? I can't really.
Can you hold it over a little bit so it's more in front of the camera? Yeah, there you go.
All right. So at Local Futures, what we recommend in terms of strategy seems a bit simplified, but is one, to connect with other people and change the I to we. It's another way of saying what you were saying with collaborating. And we can't do it on our own. I mean, there's no way, if we're going to think we're going to make changes just by changing our consumer choice, that's not going to happen on its own. Educate, meaning let's talk to everybody about these issues so that there's a greater awareness about what local food systems can do, why it's so important, how they support small farmers, and so forth, but also about the mechanisms that undermine our food systems. The one I was talking about mentioned free trade treaties, subsidies that are skewed towards the big and the transnational. The same with taxes. Our tax systems are skewed in a way that it places a huge burden on small businesses and individuals, whereas the big ones not paying any taxes or very little. And renewal, which is what we are doing here on a local level. And then we also included celebration, because I think it's very much along the lines of what you've been saying, Chris. It has to be fun, right? And otherwise, it's very difficult to stick at something that isn't fun. And as a long-term activist myself, and I know it's so often that we get so busy with things and working, and we don't take time to celebrate life, the kind of things we appreciate, and celebrate also our small successes, you know. And if we don't do that, we just don't become visible. So those are the sort of 5 things that we recommend as a strategy.
I haven't got my paper.
Oh, okay.
All right, but rattle them off anyway.
Well, I echo those all absolutely, completely. The whole thing about, you know, collaboration is to leave, you know, to leave your ego at the door is the biggest thing we could say to people. If you want to do something, just go and do it for the sake of doing it, and you can't do it on your own. It's true. I mean, I think the best sort of community get together and doing huge things I've seen is just 9 months ago down here, we were flooded. It was world news, I don't know if you know, but the whole town was flooded, the whole valley was flooded. And we had thousands and thousands of people turning up, feeding each other, working together, cleaning people's houses, cleaning people's shops. We had 1,400 businesses not destroyed, but more or less, you know, out of action for 6 months. We had 2,500 houses. But what people can do together is absolutely incredible. It was all done volunteers, government. It was on Boxing Day, so the day after Christmas. So we had no government, no council, nobody, but it was just people getting together and doing things. And not waiting for permission is the big thing that we always talk about. Just not waiting for permission to do things. Just go, I want to do this. I think it would be good. I'm prepared to do it, but you know, I'm not really bothered about getting any credit for it. But these will make our place a better place to live, and it's a better future for our children. And on my last thing, I'll go back to the incredible edible Todman people who started the movement of just growing food around the town any way you can go, the guerrilla gardening thing. But they've taken it further. They've got bees around the town. They've got schools with chickens running around in the playground. They've got schools planting their own food for their dinners, and they don't take. They're the same as Marina was saying. They don't take money because money gets in the way. So they work everything on kindness and sharing. And these are the things I think that slowly and surely we'll change the world if we can just tap into this and work together and just do extraordinary things that don't really cost a lot. But it is all about collaboration, always get down to that, working together and being nice to each other.
I just want to, probably we'll have to end soon, but I just want to ask the last question we have in the chat. I think this will definitely resonate with Marina, if not all of you. The question is about a theory called raw materials economics, which kind of states that the farmer is the most important person in the country's economy, and that what happens to farmers is the key to a domestic economy's well-being. And the question was, have you heard about that idea, and what do you think of it?
I haven't heard of that idea actually, but I agree. I think we're the most important. Is it? I haven't heard of that theory. I'm sorry, but I think Anja just touched on this. The statistic that most farmers now are about 108, and there are. I used to train generations of new growers and agriculturalists, and I don't do that anymore because there is no work training new farmers and growers. There's hardly any training left in the UK. So I'm not sure where the next generation is coming from. And when I'm in London, talking to people, I often think I just don't think people understand. I've just been doing my plum harvest, and it's phenomenally hard work. And when I say I can't answer your email because I'm doing my plum harvest, people just don't quite understand. There's 2% of the UK population work in land-based industries. People have lost touch. So yeah, I agree. We are undervalued, really. I think, and and that argument always comes back. On my stall in London. But because I don't want to. I'm not a middle-class enclave. I don't want to charge. I don't want to have expensive food. But I can't do it any cheaper. And when people say your food's too expensive, I can't afford it, I say, well, I'll knock the price off for you because I can see that. But I'm not rich. I'm not standing here. I'm not a rich person. So I can't make it any cheaper. And so that's why we need organisations, I guess, like Local Futures, who can actually figure out what's happening in that mix. Why does that work like that?
So I guess, do any of you have any closing thoughts or final things you want to say before we wrap up?
Well, I'd say that I'll definitely look up this raw material economics. I sympathize a lot with the point of view of turning this thing on its head and saying that the food production is like central to our well-being, our survival, which is sort of pretty obvious, which, a 10-year-old will be able to see that, which in this mad economy we have today is totally lost because it's not related to any reality. It's not place-based economy. You can't really it's sort of a phantom economy. And so I think pointing that out, because a lot of people don't understand it, I think it's very, very good, although to us it's probably pretty obvious. I come from a place where I live in the countryside, so most people there would understand that. Although, of course, the challenge is within this, the economy as it is today, is to create, at the same time, as I said before, we're trying to change those mechanisms that are undermining us, at the same, trying to come up with alternative people power, alternatives from below, also that makes it possible for people to survive in agriculture. Because if you could survive in agriculture, a dignified salary or income, and the well-being that can come with it if you're not overstressed, and I think a lot of young people would want to go into farming. It's not, although it hasn't had it's had a very low status, but I think that is changing in a lot of places, that the status of food and local food system and all that sort of the vitality it's bringing, you know, to communities is changing that. So I am seeing that there is a shift. I mean, at least in Mexico, lots of young people want to go from the city to the countryside and take up farming. And they do all sorts of courses on it, and they go woofing because there isn't any good training to be had in organic permaculture and agroecology, you know, really that good training, formal training. So they go and train with farmers hands-on. And many of them have to have, at least at the beginning, some other income as well. To start off, you know, maybe their partner has another job to start off, because until they can like feed into like a farmer's market or somewhere where they can have a reasonable income. So I think we have to remember that right now what we're trying to do, we are in transition. You know, it's not like the situation is perfect, but by any means, and it won't be for a while. So the situation we are seeing now is not representative of what local food system could be, and farming could be, if it wasn't because the system is so skewed against the big and the corporate. You know? So yeah. Anyway, it just what I mean is it doesn't have to be this way. You should be able, as you have in the past, to have you know, a dignified livelihood from farming, and also as a food processor.
Cool. Any closing thoughts from either of you, Chris or Marina?
We've just been using a phrase, and I think it just finished off really, but just says support your local anything.
That's a good thing to close on, for sure.
Yeah, lovely. And I'd just like to say, I hope I haven't. I love the thought of young people in Mexico going back to being food producers. That's really exciting if that's happening there as well, because that seems to be, you know, that is happening in the UK too.
There seems to be quite a bit of that around here as well at the moment. Quite a few young people going into particularly farming around this area. So it's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Marvelous.
We ran a little over, so thanks to everyone who stuck around for staying late. And thank you, Chris, Marina, and Anja, for your excellent contributions to this discussion. I'll send out an email very soon with a link to a recording of this webinar, which will be on YouTube, and also a transcript of the chat. So you'll get that very soon, probably within the next 24 hours. And we'll be back next month with a webinar probably on local renewable energy projects. And if you're signed up for our email updates, you will get an email about that as well. And we'll also be posting about that on social media. And if you enjoyed the webinar, please spread the word about the series to your friends and communities. Let them know that if they want to hear about our events, they can go to localfutures.org and sign up for our monthly email updates. So yeah, thanks again, everyone. Hope you can join us again in October.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.